Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'd like to talk a little about survival shovels. Not on most people's to bring list for going out into the bush or for prepping or for general survival needs, but I guarantee you they're worth looking into. Now, before we start, I'd like to give a shout out to some friends of mine. Chubbs, DM82, VCOG with his amazing Atoms Deer Isle Daisy server, and Tiny, also known as Bearded Tiny, who's a YouTuber who does horror game playthroughs. I'm going to leave a link in the description. Please check out his channel. He's a very funny and fun bloke to be around. Right, survival shovels. In winter, I briefly covered shovels on two occasions in different videos. One was winter survival for cars. Very useful for digging snow, and very useful as a defensive tool. And the second was building a snow trench. Okay, on both sides of the wall. In both these situations, a survival shovel is essential. Winter is really when survival shovels come to their max. You need them. They should be a mandatory part of your survival kit. Now, in summer, they are useful, but nothing in comparison to winter. So today I'm going to look at a few types of survival shovel and explain what you can do with them. To start with, we're going to go back in history a little bit. We're going to go back to World War II. Now, the survival shovel, or the entrenching tool as it is better known, has a much older history than World War II. But this is a German one. A German entrenching tool, which, because the Germans were occupying this territory in World War II and they actually lived in my house, I found this in my cellar. Unfortunately, I had to file part of the end off because of rust. This is over 80 years old. 80 years old. And the other day I used some pesticide and fungicide on it, and I'll give it a bit of a varnish, and it will go back in one of the cars into the boot of the trunk, and it will continue to function. It's over 80 years old and I still use it. Superb bit of kit. Moving slightly to the future, closer to the present, we come to this little beastie. Now this is the Soviet style of entrenching tool, or combat shovel, made famous by the Spetsnaz, because they actually carry this and they use it as both a shovel and a close quarter combat weapon. As did the Germans, as did the British in the First World War, and the Russians continued this and refined it. Now, there's a pheasant behind my garden being very loud. This particular entrenching tool, if you can focus on the date and the Cyrillic, is from 1984. And this one, it's a Russian design, but I actually got this in the Ukraine. My family and my brother and his then girlfriend, we were in Uzhhorod in the Ukraine during the revolution, during the civil war a few years ago. Actually, when they disbanded the police, there were no police in the Ukraine. And we were on a market in Uzhhorod, and he bought one for himself and one for me. This is an extremely practical piece of kit, and because of its shape, functions as a shovel and an axe. Because of this, it can be used as a close quarter combat weapon or self-defense weapon. Both of these go in the backs of my cars, and they're mostly used for in winter when there's lots of snow on the road. If the car skids off the road into the snow, you can dig it out, or if it slides on mud, you can shovel gravel onto the mud. It's very useful. It means you're not going to be stuck in a snowdrift at night, freezing to death, hoping some passerby will come and rescue you when there's a blizzard going on, which is very unlikely. I've had friends die out here because no one has come and they've been in a car crash. So these things are useful for this. Another thing they're very, very useful for, because they are also close quarter combat weapons, if this is in the back of your car and you find yourself in a situation where some not very sensible individuals are harassing you, simply employ this as a means of deterrence. Shovels are metal headed and have a blade edge. They can be sharpened. If you look into the coal steel Spetsnaz shovel, you will see it already comes with a bladed edge. I don't need to say more. Plus, it's a shovel. It goes in the back of your car for emergencies. There's nothing wrong with having a shovel in the back of your car. It just happens that you can use it for other purposes. But, you know, I'm not saying anything. An extremely popular form of shovel for not just survivalists and preppers and bushcrafters and outdoors people, but also for treasure hunters and metal detectors, is the folding shovel. Now, it's very easy to put together.
Two hours later.
This takes a lot of screwing, which isn't always a bad thing. This thing goes with me quite often, and I find this especially useful just for normal garden work. If I need to crawl under a bush to dig out a grey water pipe and I can't get reach overhead, this thing is excellent. It's also light enough and compact enough to go with me in a rucksack on my little expeditions, and it means I can dig a trench and cover it with boughs and have a nice sleeping place. This type I really recommend for those who spend a long time outdoors. And again, in winter, you must have a shovel. This one has a sawtooth, as do many, but as you'll see in a moment, knives, machetes, shovels, things with saw backs leave sawing to saws, unless it is really well designed. Chances are it's going to be next to useless, maybe to get through a rope but not through wood, but they will function as impromptu axes should you need, especially with small saplings. So with a well constructed shovel, you don't always need a hatchet with you, but again, a hatchet has a specific function, and if you can carry the weight, take one of those as well, or in place of. That is cheap. You can get these between say 10 and 20 pounds, euros, dollars, and well worth carrying. Most militaries have their own version of this. They also have a version of the entrenching tool. Definite investment, definitely worth carrying if you can deal with the weight. Now, the pièce de résistance. The other day, I was in what passes for a DIY store out here, basically just paint and building materials, and I saw this beauty, and it's Polish, and it says garden made by Dedra, and it has your traditional shovel handle, which I actually don't particularly like on survival shovels. I prefer just having a stave, although this I can still use as a stave. It has everything you could possibly need. 3 obscure wrench nut things, a bottle opener, which all survival tools have to come with, even though you can just open with the metal itself, a sawtooth, a saw blade, which as you can see seems to be rounded, and I really have no idea what that's for, because it's not for cutting wood. But this shovel comes with a bladed edge, as you can see. And best of all, this cost me €6.50, which is about $8, about £5.50. It is a bit bigger than the Russian or the Ukraine version, but it's a lot sturdier, and for snow would be a lot more useful. Because of the shaft, it means I can still chop with it as well, whereas with the folding shovel they normally have sort of a triangular buttstock, and it makes chopping quite difficult. This thing though, because of its length, yes, it would go on the back of a rucksack, a big one like an 80 litre, but this is definitely for an in-car or a long expedition haul. If you're looking at making sort of a long-term camp, you definitely need one of these, especially when it comes to latrines and stuff. But for winter survival and for car survival, this is ideal. Plus, you know, there are things you can do with that. So, little introduction to survival shovels. You don't need to spend a lot of money on them. 20 maximum. I know the cold steel Spetsnaz shovel, the version of this, runs quite a bit more than that, and it is a worthwhile investment. It's a beautiful piece of kit and it's well constructed, but you don't need to spend that much. So survival shovels, get yourself one. Watch the weight. You don't want to be getting something way too heavy. Don't get one which has multiple things like saw blades and tooth cleaners and all this shit from some Alibaba website, because it's just going to break. It still has to be a simple basic construction, and it falls over. There is a reason their design hasn't changed basically for centuries, because it works. You start adding stuff to it, it's going to break or at least malfunction at a critical moment, like most things. Knives haven't changed for a very long period. Neither have axes, neither have shovels. And a shovel can save your life. As always, please subscribe to my channel, watch my videos and like them, and as always, be free.